when a reckless biker kicked a dog just for fun. He had no clue that the dog's owner was none other than Keanu Reeves. What started as a calm and peaceful afternoon stroll was about to erupt into a fiery confrontation, once again proving the golden rule: never mess with a man's loyal dog. The towering concrete walls of Brooklyn Heights seemed to trap the morning heat, intensifying the buzz around the busy film set of John Wick. The air hung heavy with the smell of sizzling asphalt, mingling with the faint, tempting aroma of street food drifting over from nearby vendors. The ground was a maze of snaking cables, resembling sleeping serpents, with camera gear scattered everywhere. "That's a wrap for this scene, everyone." The director's voice pierced through the chaotic hum of activity on set. "We're breaking for lunch. 1 hour. Let's regroup here afterward for the next shoot." His words were met with a collective wave of relief, as the exhausted crew, who'd been working tirelessly since the crack of dawn, let out a unanimous sigh. As the crew dispersed, their excited chatter about lunch options filled the air. A small group started gathering near the catering truck. "Hey, Keanu," one of them called out. "We're headed to that new deli on Atlantic Avenue. Want to tag along?" Keanu Reeves turned in the direction of the voice, a warm, easygoing smile lighting up his face. But before he could respond, his attention was snagged by Buddy, the pit bull starring in their scenes. Panting from the heat, the dog stood nearby, his tongue hanging out as he searched for relief from the sweltering temperature. "You guys go ahead," Keanu replied, his gaze still fixed on Buddy. "I'll hang back and take care of our four-legged buddy here. Looks like he could use a good walk." The dog keeper, a wiry man with a clipboard tucked under one arm, stepped in politely. "That's okay, Mr. Reeves. Buddy's my responsibility. I'll take him out. It's my job, after all." Keanu held up a hand, his expression sincere. "I'd really like to do it, if that's all right. It'll help me bond with him for our upcoming scenes." He hesitated for a second, a thoughtful glimmer in his eyes. "Besides, I've always wondered what it's like to care for a dog, even if it's just for a little while." The dog keeper seemed unsure, his brow furrowing slightly. Keanu quickly added, with a reassuring smile, "Don't worry. We won't go far. I'll make sure he gets a treat and plenty of water when we're back." After a brief pause, the dog keeper nodded in agreement. "All right, Mr. Reeves. Just be careful. Buddy's a good boy, but he can be a bit of a handful sometimes." With the dog keeper's blessing secured, Keanu got ready for their walk. He took the sturdy leash handed to him and pocketed a few waste bags the dog keeper provided. With a collapsible silicone water container in hand, Keanu securely fastened the leash to Buddy's collar. His movements were slow and deliberate, a gentle care in every action. He tucked the water container and other essentials into the pockets of his leather jacket, patting them lightly to ensure they were snug. Kneeling to meet Buddy's gaze, Keanu spoke warmly, his tone brimming with kindness. "Ready for a walk, Buddy? Feeling thirsty?" he asked. "Let's find a nice quiet spot to rest." Buddy's tail wagged furiously in response, his earlier discomfort momentarily forgotten under the glow of Keanu's attention. "I bet you're parched," Keanu continued, noticing the dog's persistent panting. "Let's find you some water. Sorry, I didn't bring any with me today." Standing tall, Keanu turned to the few remaining crew members. "See you all in an hour," he called, giving them a casual wave. Then, with a gentle tug on Buddy's leash, the unlikely duo ventured into the streets of Brooklyn Heights, leaving the orchestrated chaos of the film set behind for whatever surprises the neighborhood had in store. Under the blazing sun, Keanu and Buddy wandered the streets of Brooklyn Heights, the midday heat shimmering off the pavement in golden waves. Buddy's panting grew heavier, his need for water becoming increasingly urgent. Keanu's eyes scanned their surroundings, searching for any sign of a water fountain or a dog-friendly cafe. As they turned a corner, a striking building loomed ahead. Above its weathered entrance, the sign read iron and ash, its faded lettering hinting at its long-standing roots in the community. The low growl of motorcycles rumbled through the air, and a neat line of bikes gleamed under the sunlight, stationed like sentinels in front of the bar. Keanu's expression tightened, his grip on Buddy's leash instinctively firming as he sized up the scene. The biker bar radiated an air of rugged defiance, a sharp contrast to the polished cafes and boutiques that dotted most of Brooklyn Heights. Just as Keanu debated turning back, a gleam of silver caught his eye, a public water fountain nestled between two motorcycles. Relief flooded him, and he guided Buddy toward it without hesitation. With practiced ease, he retrieved the collapsible water container from his pocket, pressing its silicone sides outward to form a makeshift bowl. Cool water gushed from the fountain, and Keanu filled the bowl, setting it down for Buddy to drink. The pit bull lapped eagerly at the water, his thirst finally quenched. Keanu stepped aside, allowing a burly man with tattoos snaking up his muscular arms to use the fountain. While Buddy drank, Keanu's sharp eyes studied the bar's patrons, men clad in leather jackets, worn jeans, and sturdy boots coming and going in a steady stream. Despite their similar uniforms, their demeanors varied. Some swaggered in with exaggerated confidence, while others moved with a quiet vigilance, their eyes darting as if constantly sizing up their surroundings. To Keanu's surprise, several bikers offered Buddy smiles or nods, their tough exteriors softened by the sight of the dog. The tattooed man who had just finished at the fountain lingered for a moment, his gruff voice carrying an unexpected warmth. "Nice pit bull you've got there," he remarked, his tone friendly despite his rugged appearance. "People misunderstand them a lot, you know. Same as they do with us bikers. Loyal to the core, both of 'em, if you treat 'em right." Keanu returned the man's smile, a flicker of appreciation lighting his face. "You're right about that," he replied. "There's always more beneath the surface than people think." Their conversation was interrupted as a waitress emerged from the bar, stepping behind the hostess stand near the entrance. Her apron was slightly crumpled and stained, a quiet testament to a long day's work. "Here's the paraphrased version of your script, keeping the tone and emotional engagement intact." The waitress looked visibly tired, her apron wrinkled and stained from a long shift, but her face lit up the moment her eyes fell on Buddy. "Oh, what a handsome boy!" she exclaimed, her tone filled with warmth as she walked over. Kneeling down, she extended her hand for Buddy to sniff, and the dog responded with a gentle lick, his tail wagging in delight. She laughed, scratching behind his ears. "He's such a good boy," she said, then leaned closer to Keanu, dropping her voice to a playful whisper. "Kinder than half the men inside, I'd wager." She chuckled at her own joke, the sound light and genuine. Keanu smiled back, appreciating her cheerful demeanor. As he folded the silicone container and tucked it back into his jacket, he gave her a friendly wave. "Thanks for the warm welcome," he said, preparing to continue their walk. They hadn't gone far from the bar when raised voices caught Keanu's attention. Turning back, he saw the same waitress in the middle of a heated argument with a group of 5 bikers. Though she stood her ground with a firm voice and defensive posture, the tension was palpable. "I told you yesterday, your gang isn't welcome here anymore," she declared, her words cutting through the commotion. "After what happened last time, the boss made it clear, you're banned." The bikers loomed over her, their faces hard and angry. One of them, a massive man with a shaved head, took a threatening step forward. "Move aside, sweetheart," he growled, "or we'll move you ourselves." The confrontation was escalating fast. Keanu hesitated, torn between the urge to step in and his responsibility to keep Buddy safe. Just as he was weighing his options, another group of bikers emerged from inside the bar. Without a word, they formed a protective circle around the waitress, shielding her from the aggressors. "You heard the lady," one of them said, his voice calm but unmistakably dangerous. "Time for you to leave." Sensing the growing tension and mindful of his promise to Buddy's handler, Keanu decided it was best to leave quietly. Keeping his movements subtle, he guided Buddy away from the brewing conflict, avoiding any unnecessary attention. As they walked, Keanu felt a mix of relief and unease. The incident at the bar hinted at deeper tensions in the neighborhood, tensions he hoped wouldn't cast a shadow over the rest of their outing. Several blocks later, the atmosphere shifted. The chaotic energy of the biker bar gave way to a more peaceful part of Brooklyn Heights. Trees lined the streets, their leafy branches casting a soothing shade over the sidewalks. The air felt cooler, calmer, a welcome reprieve from the midday heat. Turning a corner, Keanu spotted a charming little cafe ahead. Its outdoor seating area was a serene retreat, the tables and chairs scattered under a canopy of string lights that crisscrossed above. Even in daylight, the twinkling bulbs lent the place an enchanting, whimsical vibe. A chalkboard by the entrance listed the day's specials in colorful, artistic handwriting. Keanu stopped, weighing his options. The shaded patio seemed perfect, a place to rest, grab a quick bite, and keep Buddy comfortable in the process. Decision made, he approached an empty table. With practiced care, he removed Buddy's leash and took a seat. Sliding another chair next to his, Keanu patted it lightly. "Come on, boy," he said softly. "You've earned a break." Buddy didn't hesitate. With surprising agility for his size, the pit bull hopped onto the chair, settling himself with a contented sigh. His calm and well-mannered behavior drew smiles and admiring glances from nearby patrons, many of whom couldn't help but appreciate the furry guest. As Keanu settled into his chair, a waitress approached their table. Her name tag read Maggie, and she greeted them with a warm, professional smile. Maggie carried herself with the effortless poise of someone who genuinely loved their work. "Good afternoon," she greeted warmly, her professional demeanor softening as her eyes landed on Buddy. "Oh, aren't you a handsome boy?" she added, directing her words to the dog with a playful smile. Keanu returned her smile, appreciating her friendliness. "He sure is," he said with a light chuckle. "I hope it's okay that he's sitting up here with me." Maggie dismissed his concern with a wave of her hand. "As long as he's well behaved, we're happy to have him here." She gave Buddy an approving look. "Now, what can I get for you two today?" Keanu thought for a moment before responding. "I'll take a coffee and a steak sandwich, please. And could I also get a plain, unsalted steak for my friend here?" He gestured toward Buddy, who perked up at the mention of food. Maggie smiled knowingly, jotting down the order with practiced efficiency. "Of course. 1 coffee, 1 steak sandwich, and a special treat for the distinguished gentleman," she said with a wink at Buddy. "I'll have that right out for you." As Maggie disappeared back inside to place the order, Keanu settled in to wait. From the inner pocket of his leather jacket, he pulled out a folded script and spread it across the table. Buddy, meanwhile, lounged contentedly beside him, his tail wagging lazily. Keanu alternated between reviewing his lines and giving Buddy a gentle pat on the head every so often. "Just a little longer, Buddy," he murmured, rubbing the dog's ears affectionately. "Food's on the way." True to her word, Maggie returned shortly, balancing a tray. "Here's your coffee," she said, placing the steaming cup in front of Keanu. "The kitchen's just finishing up your steak and your friend's special order. It'll be out in a moment." "Thank you," Keanu replied with a nod, the rich aroma of the coffee momentarily distracting him. The scent made his stomach growl, a reminder of how hungry he was. Just as he raised the cup to take a sip, the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by a sudden commotion. A burly man in a leather biker vest strolled past their table, his expression sour. He muttered loudly enough to be heard, "Filthy animals, sitting at tables like their people." Before Keanu could fully process the insult, the man's boot lashed out, striking Buddy in the side. The dog let out a startled yelp that quickly turned into distressed barking, his cries echoing across the patio and drawing everyone's attention. In an instant, the serene moment had erupted into chaos. Keanu's relaxed demeanor evaporated as his muscles tensed, his protective instincts surging to the surface. Without hesitation, Keanu shot to his feet, the legs of his chair scraping harshly against the patio floor. His entire body was rigid with anger, his piercing eyes locking onto the biker with an intensity that silenced the murmurs of onlookers. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Keanu's voice was low, steady, and laced with barely restrained fury. He stepped forward, positioning himself firmly between Buddy and the aggressor, his posture a clear message that he wasn't backing down. The biker froze momentarily, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of Keanu's reaction. Buddy, still growling low and steady, remained close to Keanu, his stance mirroring his protector's resolve. Keanu glanced back toward the patio through the cafe's large front window. Buddy was sitting calmly, his leash secured to the table leg, tail wagging occasionally as he watched the world pass by. Maggie, true to her word, stood nearby, chatting with a patron while keeping an eye on the dog. As the line inched forward, Keanu's mind wandered, replaying the earlier encounter with the biker. The snarling tiger insignia flashed in his memory, a detail he couldn't ignore. He'd seen that symbol twice now, in front of Iron and Ash and on the man who'd kicked Buddy. A sense of unease settled over him, though he tried to push it aside. Finally, it was his turn. He stepped into the restroom, washed his hands, and splashed cool water on his face, trying to shake the lingering tension. Taking a deep breath, he straightened up, adjusted his jacket, and headed back toward the patio. As he approached the door, a muffled commotion reached his ears. His pace quickened, and when he stepped outside, his heart sank. Buddy's leash was still secured to the table, but the dog was barking furiously, his body tense. Maggie was no longer in sight, and the man from earlier, the biker with the snarling tiger vest, was standing a few feet away, glaring down at Buddy. The biker's hand hovered near the leash, as if he'd been considering untying it. "What do you want with my dog?" Keanu's voice was sharp and commanding as he strode forward, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. The biker turned slowly, his sneer returning. "Just thought I'd see how tough your mutt really is," he said, his voice oozing mockery. "Looks like he's all bark and no bite." Keanu stepped between the man and Buddy, his stance protective. "Leave. Now," he said, his tone brooking no argument. For a moment, it seemed like the biker might push back, but something in Keanu's intense gaze made him reconsider. He raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Hollywood," he said, backing away with a smirk. "We'll meet again." Keanu watched him until he disappeared around the corner, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. Buddy pressed against Keanu's leg, his barking subsiding into soft whines. Keanu knelt down, scratching behind the dog's ears. "It's okay, Buddy," he murmured, though the words felt as much for himself as for the dog. Maggie returned moments later, her expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry. I only stepped inside for a second to grab something for another table," she explained, her concern evident. "Is everything all right?" Keanu nodded, though his jaw remained tight. "We're fine," he said, standing. "But I think it's time for us to head out." Maggie looked as though she wanted to say more, but simply nodded. "Take care of yourself, and your handsome boy," she said softly. Keanu thanked her, slipped a generous tip under his plate, and untied Buddy's leash. As they walked away from the cafe, Keanu's thoughts raced. The biker's ominous words echoed in his mind, a stark reminder that this was far from over. But for now, he focused on getting Buddy back to the safety of the film set. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As he could, his voice tight with worry. A man fed him something, a sausage. It could have been poisoned. He was fine before that. Dr. Harper nodded, her expression grim but focused. She turned to her assistant, who had appeared at her side. "Get the toxin kit ready, and prepare for induced emesis. We'll need blood work and a stomach lavage immediately." The assistant hurried out of the room as Dr. Harper placed an oxygen mask over Buddy's snout. "We're going to do everything we can," she reassured Keanu, her tone calm but urgent. "This type of poisoning isn't uncommon, and time is on our side since you got him here quickly." Keanu stepped back, giving them space to work but staying close enough to offer Buddy a comforting presence. His hand rested on the dog's paw, his touch gentle but firm. "You're going to be okay, Buddy," he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Dr. Harper and her assistant worked with practiced efficiency, administering activated charcoal to absorb any toxins, running 4 fluids, and monitoring Buddy's vitals closely. Keanu could only watch, feeling a helplessness that gnawed at him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Harper looked up. "He's stable for now," she said, her voice steady but cautious. "The toxin appears to have been something fast-acting but not lethal in the amount he ingested. We'll keep him here for observation, but I'm optimistic he'll recover fully." Keanu let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Relief washed over him, though it was tinged with anger. Whoever that biker was, he had targeted Buddy deliberately. This wasn't just a random act of cruelty, it was a message. "Thank you," Keanu said, his gratitude evident in his tone. "Thank you for saving him." Dr. Harper offered a small smile. "It's what we're here for. He's a strong boy, and he's lucky to have you." Keanu stayed with Buddy as the dog rested, his breathing now steady and his body beginning to relax. The clinic had offered to keep Buddy overnight for observation, but Keanu wasn't ready to leave his side just yet. As he sat there, his mind replayed the events of the day. The snarling tiger insignia, the deliberate poisoning. It was clear this was no coincidence. The biker's earlier threat echoed in his mind. "You'll pay for this." Keanu's jaw tightened. Whoever these people were, they had crossed a line. He wasn't just going to let this slide. But for now, his focus was on Buddy. The rest could wait. Gently stroking the dog's fur, Keanu whispered, "We'll get through this, Buddy. Together." This was an intentional attempt to harm Buddy, and perhaps send a message. Dr. Harper continued, her tone measured but firm. "The good news is that the dose Buddy ingested wasn't high enough to cause irreversible damage. The activated charcoal we administered has neutralized much of the toxin, and the 4 fluids are helping to flush his system. However, he'll need to stay here under observation for at least 24 hours. We'll monitor his liver and kidney functions closely to ensure there are no lingering effects." Keanu exhaled deeply, the weight on his chest easing slightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything you've done." Dr. Harper placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "He's a strong dog, and you acted quickly. That made all the difference." As she stood to leave, Keanu stopped her. "Doctor, I need to know. Would it be possible to get a report on this? Something official, in case I need it for the authorities or legal action." Dr. Harper nodded. "Of course. We'll prepare a full report for you, including the test results and our treatment notes. If you suspect this was intentional, I'd strongly recommend reporting it to the police. Animals are protected under the law, and what happened here is a serious offense." Keanu thanked her again as she left to check on Buddy. Sitting alone once more in the waiting room, he felt a surge of determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled through his contacts until he found the name of a friend in law enforcement. He hesitated for only a moment before pressing the call button. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. "Hey, it's me," Keanu began, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within him. "I need your help. Buddy's been poisoned, and I think I know who's responsible. I need to make sure they don't get away with this." The conversation was brief but productive. His friend promised to look into the situation and advised Keanu to file a formal report at the nearest precinct. "And Keanu," his friend added, "be careful. If these people are who you think they are, they might not stop at just a warning." As the call ended, Keanu leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The Tiger Claw insignia, the biker's earlier threat, and the deliberate poisoning, it was all connected. These weren't random acts of cruelty. They were calculated moves by someone who wanted to intimidate him or worse. But they had underestimated one thing: Keanu's resolve. He wasn't going to let fear dictate his actions. Not now. Not ever. For Buddy, for justice, and for every other potential victim of these bikers' malice, Keanu knew he had to act. As he waited for the vet's final update, his determination solidified into a plan. First, he would ensure Buddy made a full recovery. Then, he would gather every piece of evidence he could and take it to the authorities. And if these bikers crossed his path again, well, they'd learn the hard way that messing with Keanu Reeves, or his dog, was a mistake they'd regret for the rest of their lives. But for everyone in the bar, these bikers were not just thugs. They were bullies who thrived on fear and control, and escalating the situation recklessly could lead to more harm than good. Keanu knew he needed a better plan, one that would ensure justice without putting innocent people at risk. Keanu turned back to the employee. "Listen," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I know you're scared, and you're right to be cautious. But you don't have to deal with this alone. These guys can't keep getting away with this." The employee looked at him skeptically. "What can you do? They're dangerous." Keanu smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say I've been in a few situations where the odds weren't in my favor. But for now, I just need information. Do you know anything about the man with the mohawk? The one with the Tiger Claw insignia?" The employee hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I know him. They call him Big Jack. He's not just some random biker. He's one of the leaders. Runs this crew like a gang. If he's the one who did this to your dog—" The man trailed off, his expression grim. Keanu's jaw tightened. "Thanks. That helps. Do me a favor. Stay safe, and if you can, let your boss know to keep the staff clear of these guys tonight. I'll take it from here." Before the employee could respond, Keanu slipped away, disappearing into the shadows of the street. He needed reinforcements, and he knew exactly who to call. Pulling out his phone, he dialed his law enforcement contact again. This time, his tone was decisive and urgent. "Hey, it's me again. I've got a lead. The guy's name is Big Jack, and he's running a crew out of a bar called Iron and Ash. They've been intimidating people in the neighborhood for months, and they're the ones who poisoned Buddy." His contact swore softly on the other end. "That's serious. We've had reports about that crew before, but nothing concrete enough to act on. If you've got evidence—" "I don't have much yet," Keanu admitted. "But I'm working on it. I'm going to need backup." These guys are dangerous, and I don't want anyone else getting hurt. There was a pause. Then his contact replied, "Understood. Give me some time to put together a team. In the meantime, don't do anything reckless." Keanu smiled grimly. "Reckless isn't my style. I'll be in touch." Hanging up, Keanu considered his next move. He couldn't afford to wait passively while the authorities mobilized. The bikers wouldn't stay in one place forever, and there was no guarantee they wouldn't escalate their behavior in the meantime. He needed to keep them in check, but without direct confrontation. Walking a few blocks away from the bar, Keanu ducked into a quiet coffee shop. He pulled out his laptop, connecting to the cafe's Wi-Fi, and began digging into everything he could find about Big Jack and the crew. He combed through public records, local news reports, and social media posts, piecing together a clearer picture of their operations. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. Big Jack's crew wasn't just a nuisance. They were a well-organized criminal outfit, involved in extortion, illegal weapons trade, and even suspected drug trafficking. The poisoning of Buddy wasn't an isolated incident. It was a tactic they used to send messages and enforce control. Keanu saved everything he found, compiling it into a dossier he could share with the authorities. As he worked, a plan began to take shape. If he could document their behavior tonight, without putting himself or others at risk, it might be enough to push the police into action. When he returned to the bar, night had fallen, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Keanu positioned himself discreetly across the street, using his phone to record video and take photos of the bikers' behavior. They were loud, aggressive, and unrestrained, their actions providing plenty of evidence of their intimidation tactics. As he observed, he noticed something unusual. A delivery van pulled up behind the bar, and several bikers emerged to meet it. They exchanged quick words with the driver before unloading crates from the back of the van. Keanu zoomed in with his phone, capturing the scene. From the markings on the crates and the bikers' careful movements, it was clear they were dealing in something illegal, likely weapons or drugs. This was the break he needed. Keanu sent the footage to his law enforcement contact with a brief message. "They're making a drop. You need to move now." Minutes later, the sound of distant sirens broke the stillness of the night. The bikers, oblivious to Keanu's presence, began to scramble as the flashing lights of police vehicles approached. Keanu stayed hidden, watching as officers swarmed the bar, arresting several of the bikers and securing the evidence from the van. As the chaos unfolded, Keanu allowed himself a moment of relief. Justice wasn't always swift, but tonight it had been decisive. And as he turned to head back to the clinic, his thoughts returned to Buddy. The fight wasn't over, but they had won this round. For the employees and patrons caught in the crossfire, a plan began forming in Keanu's mind. He had connections, people equipped to handle this kind of situation safely and officially. One name rose to the top: Sheriff Hank Morrison, a trusted friend with the authority and expertise for incidents like these. Keanu turned to the employee. His decision solidified. "I think I know someone who can help," he said. The employee's eyes brightened with a flicker of hope. "Who are you going to call?" he asked. Keanu offered a calm, reassuring smile. "Someone who can end this legally and safely. Just stay calm and keep yourself safe. Help is on its way." With that, Keanu stepped away from the bar, retrieving his phone. His fingers moved with precision as he dialed Hank's number. As the phone rang, Keanu's thoughts raced, organizing everything he needed to communicate. When the call connected, Keanu spoke in a low, urgent tone. "Hank, it's Keanu. I need your help. There's a situation in Brooklyn Heights." Their conversation was brief but intense. Keanu detailed the day's events with controlled urgency, explaining the attack on Buddy and the suspected presence of illegal substances. "The bikers who drugged the dog are at a bar called Iron and Ash," he said, his gaze fixed on the bar's entrance. "I'm here now. They likely still have the substances with them." Hank's voice came through steady and authoritative. "I understand. Don't engage, Keanu. Stay put. We'll be there soon." Keanu agreed, ending the call with relief, knowing Hank would handle the situation efficiently. As he pocketed his phone, he noticed the employee watching him anxiously. The man approached hesitantly. "Did you call the police?" he whispered. Keanu nodded, but before he could elaborate, the employee's expression twisted into panic. "No, you can't," he hissed. "The boss. The business. It won't survive police involvement." Keanu cut him off, his tone firm yet understanding. "Think about what you're saying. What's left to protect here? A business that fails to guarantee basic safety for its staff? That lets criminals threaten the community?" The man faltered, unable to respond. Keanu softened his voice. "You deserve better. Real security outside, not employees like you being put in harm's way. This isn't right, and you know it." After a moment, the man nodded, resignation in his eyes. "You're right," he admitted quietly. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of sirens. Within minutes, police vehicles arrived, their silent approach signaling tactical precision. Officers exited swiftly, their movements coordinated as they surrounded the bar. Keanu watched as the police executed their operation with calculated efficiency. Through the windows, he saw the chaos unfold, tables overturned, patrons corralled, and the bikers subdued. The search was thorough, and Keanu overheard snippets of officers' conversations as they emerged, discussing the significant cache of illegal substances found. This wasn't just petty crime. The discovery of a supply in the storage area pointed to organized distribution. As the suspects were secured and led to police vehicles, Keanu felt a surge of relief, satisfaction, and a lingering anger over what had happened to Buddy. The arrests were methodical, the suspects' rights read as they were taken away. The flashing lights of police cars painted the scene in an eerie glow, drawing a crowd of curious onlookers. Aware of the growing attention, Keanu discreetly slipped on his sunglasses. He had accomplished what he came to do. It was time to let the law take over. As the final biker was escorted away, Keanu's thoughts returned to Buddy. With the immediate danger neutralized, he could now focus on what mattered most, ensuring the dog's recovery and safe return to the film set. With one last glance at the scene, Keanu turned and began heading back to the veterinary clinic. The day had taken an unexpected turn, but his resolve remained unwavering. But as he walked toward the veterinary clinic, Keanu couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The ones responsible for Buddy's condition would finally face justice. Yet, fate had one more encounter in store for him. Just as the police were finishing loading the last few bikers into their vehicles, Keanu's path crossed with a familiar face, the man who had kicked Buddy at the cafe. Their eyes locked, the bikers widening in recognition. A flash of anger and fear crossed his expression as he realized who stood before him. The man behind the sunglasses was the same one who had grabbed him earlier. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. Keanu felt a surge of emotions, anger, disgust, and even a tinge of pity for someone whose choices had led them to this point. Taking a steadying breath, he spoke, his voice calm and controlled. "You know," Keanu said quietly, "I recently came across a line that feels pretty fitting right now. You don't mess with a man's dog." He paused, letting his words linger in the air. "This is real life. Actions have real consequences." The biker's face twisted with rage. "I hope that dog died," he spat, struggling against the officer holding him. Keanu's expression didn't waver, though his eyes hardened. "He didn't," Keanu replied coldly. "And now you'll have plenty of time to think about why hurting an innocent animal seemed like a good idea." Without waiting for a response, Keanu turned and walked away. The biker's angry shouts followed him, but he didn't look back. The officers quickly subdued the man, shoving him into the back of a police car. As Keanu made his way back to the veterinary clinic, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The confrontation, though brief, had brought him a sense of closure. He had faced the man responsible for Buddy's suffering and done so without resorting to violence or vengeance. The streets that had seen him rushing with an injured Buddy now bore witness to his measured return. The urgency that had driven him earlier had been replaced by a quiet determination to ensure Buddy's full recovery. When Keanu arrived at the clinic, Dr. Harper was waiting with a tired but reassuring smile. "Mr. Reeves," she greeted, "I'm happy to report that Buddy is stabilizing. The antidotes and supportive care are working well. We've counteracted most of the poison's effects." Relief washed over Keanu. "That's wonderful news, Doctor. What's the next step?" Dr. Harper gestured for him to follow her. "As they walk to Buddy's recovery area," she explained, "we'll keep him under observation for the next 24 hours to monitor for any complications. He's on a regimen of medications, including anti-nausea drugs and liver protectants, and we've started him on a special diet to aid his recovery." When they reached Buddy's enclosure, Keanu saw the dog lying on a soft bed, hooked up to various monitors. Despite the wires and tubes, Buddy's tail gave a faint wag at the sight of Keanu, bringing a lump to his throat. "Hey, Buddy," Keanu said softly, kneeling to meet the dog's gaze. "You're going to be okay. We got the bad guys." Dr. Harper watched the interaction with a smile. "If there are no complications, Buddy should be able to go home tomorrow. You'll need to continue his medication and follow the diet plan, but his prognosis looks good." Keanu nodded, already committing her instructions to memory. "I'll be here first thing in the morning," he promised. "My hotel's nearby, so I can come back quickly if anything changes." As they finalized the details of Buddy's care, Keanu's attention was drawn to a small TV in the clinic's reception area. The local news was broadcasting a report on the arrests at Iron and Ash, detailing the multiple charges against the biker gang. Particular emphasis was placed on the charges of animal cruelty, with mention of detectives finding traces of dog fur on one suspect's boots. While confirmation was pending, tests were being conducted to solidify the evidence. Watching the report, Keanu felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Justice was being served, and the neighborhood would be safer because of it. He was especially relieved that the coverage made no mention of his involvement. Hank had kept his word about maintaining discretion. The news also revealed that the owner of Iron and Ash was under investigation, and the bar would remain closed pending further inquiries. It seemed that the day's events would ripple out, bringing positive changes to the community. As Keanu prepared to leave the clinic, he was struck by the emotional roller coaster of the day. Fear, anger, and now, finally, relief had all played their part. With Buddy on the mend and justice in motion, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope for what lay ahead. More than anything, Keanu felt a profound connection to Buddy, one that extended far beyond their on-screen relationship. They had been through something deeply real together, a shared experience that would undoubtedly bring a raw authenticity to their performances when they returned to set. With a final pat for Buddy and a heartfelt word of gratitude to Dr. Harper and her team, Keanu stepped into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, adjusting the production schedule, ensuring Buddy's continued recovery, and stepping back into his role. But tonight, he found solace in knowing they had overcome a significant hurdle together. The walk back to his hotel offered Keanu a rare moment of quiet reflection. The streets of Brooklyn Heights, bustling as always, somehow felt lighter, as if the resolution of the day's conflict had rippled outward, changing the very atmosphere of the neighborhood. Keanu's thoughts naturally drifted to Buddy. What had started as a simple exercise to deepen his connection to his character had evolved into a life-or-death ordeal that tested his courage and resolve in ways he hadn't anticipated. He couldn't help but marvel at the unexpected bond that had formed between them, a bond born not of rehearsed lines but of shared vulnerability and trust. He thought about how this experience would shape their on-screen chemistry. The genuine affection and connection they now shared would transcend the script, lending an emotional depth that no acting technique could replicate. As he neared his hotel, Keanu's phone buzzed. The name of the film's producer flashed on the screen. With a steadying breath, Keanu answered. "Keanu," the producer's voice carried a mix of concern and weariness. "How's Buddy doing?" Keanu gave a concise update on Buddy's condition, highlighting the positive outlook for his recovery. He could almost hear the producer's mental calculations as he processed how this would impact the shooting schedule. "This is going to delay things," the producer admitted with a heavy sigh. "We'll need to reshuffle the schedule. Maybe move your scenes without Buddy to the front." Keanu's response was firm but calm. "I understand. But Buddy's health comes first. We can't rush his recovery." There was a pause before the producer replied, his tone softening. "You're right. Of course. We'll make it work. The vet says he'll be ready in a few days." "That's the hope," Keanu confirmed. "I'll pick him up tomorrow and follow the vet's instructions to the letter." For the next few minutes, they worked out the logistics for adjusting the schedule. Keanu was heartened by the producer's willingness to accommodate Buddy's needs, seeing it as a positive step toward better treatment of animal actors in the industry. As the call ended, Keanu stepped into the hotel lobby. His phone buzzed again, a text message from Sheriff Hank Morrison. "Operation successful. All suspects in custody. Evidence secured. Your involvement remains confidential. Well done, asterisk asterisk." A small smile played on Keanu's lips as he read the message. Sheriff Hank's efficient handling of the situation and his discretion in keeping Keanu's role private reassured him. The threat to Buddy and the neighborhood had been neutralized without compromising his privacy or the film's production. The day's adventure might have concluded, but Keanu knew his journey with Buddy was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more scenes to shoot, and a renewed appreciation for the bond he shared with his four-legged co-star. As Keanu finally drifted off to sleep, a contented smile lingered on his face, the kind of smile that comes from facing adversity head-on and emerging stronger, with lessons learned and connections deepened.